The emergency lights flickered red, casting long shadows across the cramped lift compartment. Dr. Mara Soren pressed her palm against the cool metal wall, steadying her breathing as the gravity stabilizers hummed their dying song. Somewhere between Deck 7 and Deck 8 of the Valeth Research Station, the universe had decided to test her patience. She wasn't alone. Huddled in the corner, 4 Cavrith cubs trembled, their crystalline fur bristling with bioluminescent fear. Each was no larger than a terrier, but their teeth, needle-sharp and numerous, gleamed in the emergency lighting. Their parents, the station's lead xenobiologists, were 17 decks away, probably unaware their children had snuck into the lift during the shift change. The largest cub, Kira, positioned herself between Mara and her siblings. A low growl rumbled from her throat, and her 6 eyes, 3 on each side of her angular head, tracked every movement Mara made. "Easy there," Mara whispered, keeping her voice soft. She'd read the briefings. Cavrith were predators on their home world, pack hunters who brought down prey 3 times their size. Their diplomatic corps had only joined the Galactic Council 2 cycles ago, and interspecies protocols were still being established. The briefings had been very clear. Cavrith cubs were particularly dangerous when frightened. Their instinct was to attack first, ask questions never. Kira's growl intensified. The 3 smaller cubs behind her whimpered, their bodies pressed so tightly together they looked like a single shivering organism. Mara considered her options. She could try to access the emergency panel, but that meant crossing the compartment, crossing Kira's defensive perimeter. She could call for help through her comm, but the electromagnetic interference from the failing lift systems would likely block any signal. Or she could wait, hope the station's engineers noticed the malfunction before the oxygen recyclers gave out. The smallest cub let out a sharp cry of distress. Kira lunged forward 1/2 meter, teeth bared. Mara's heart hammered, but she didn't move. Moving meant danger. Moving meant prey behavior. Instead, she did something that would have horrified the xenobiologists aboard the station. She sat down, not in a chair, not perched ready to spring. She folded her legs beneath her, crossed-legged on the cold metal floor, and let her hands rest openly on her knees. The position left her completely vulnerable, unable to rise quickly, unable to defend herself if the cubs decided she was a threat. "I know you're scared," she said quietly, her eyes lowered, not making direct challenging contact. "I'm scared too. But we're stuck here together, and I'm not going to hurt you." Kira's ears, delicate, translucent things that caught the light like stained glass, twitched. The growling stopped, replaced by uncertain silence. Mara continued speaking, letting her voice become a steady rhythm. She talked about nothing important: the hydroponics bay where she worked, the tomato plants that refused to fruit properly in artificial gravity, the moss samples she'd collected from the station's water reclamation system. Her words didn't matter. Her tone did. Soft, unthreatening, patient. Minutes passed. The emergency lights continued their slow, hypnotic pulse. The smallest cub shifted, peeking around Kira's protective flank. Its eyes, bright amber in the dim light, fixed on Mara with obvious curiosity. Mara smiled but kept her teeth covered. Bared teeth meant aggression in 70% of known species. "Hi there, little one." Kira took a tentative step forward, nostrils flaring as she scented the air. Cavrith relied heavily on pheromones for communication, and Mara wondered what she smelled like to them. Fear, certainly. Adrenaline. But also something else. Something that made Kira's defensive posture slowly relax. Humans secreted oxytocin through their skin when calm. Mara had read that in a xenopsychology journal once. She'd never imagined it might save her life. Another step. Kira was close enough now that Mara could see the individual crystals in her fur, each one refracting light into tiny rainbows. The cub's breathing had steadied, no longer rapid with panic. "That's it," Mara murmured. "I'm not so scary, am I?" Kira sat down. It was a deliberate motion, controlled and decisive. She folded her 6 legs beneath her body in a mirror of Mara's posture and regarded the human with what might have been respect or at least reassessment. The 3 smaller cubs watched their sister with rapt attention. If Kira deemed this strange, soft-skinned creature safe, then safe it must be. One by one, they crept forward. The smallest reached Mara first, pressing its cold nose against her outstretched hand. Its crystalline fur felt like glass fibers, smooth and surprisingly warm. Mara held perfectly still as it sniffed her fingers, her wrist, her sleeve. Then it lay down beside her, curling against her crossed legs with a contented chirp. The others followed. Within moments, Mara found herself surrounded by Kavreth cubs, their bodies radiating heat and trust. Kira settled closest to Mara's knee, one ear tilted toward the human's chest, listening to her heartbeat. "Well," Mara said softly, "this wasn't in the manual." The lift shuddered. The lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized to a steady amber. Somewhere in the mechanical guts of the station, the repair systems had finally engaged. With a groan of protesting metal, the compartment lurched upward. Kira raised her head, alert but not alarmed. The cubs stirred but didn't scatter. They remained where they were, pressed against the human who had shown them something their evolutionary history had never prepared them for: vulnerability as strength. Stillness as safety, the peculiar human ability to set aside self-preservation in favor of connection. The lift doors opened on Deck 8 to a crowd of frantic Kavreth and concerned station personnel. The cubs' parents rushed forward, chittering in their harmonic language, relief evident in every gesture. But the cubs didn't immediately run to them. Each one turned back to look at Mara, still sitting cross-legged on the floor, her expression calm and warm. Kira approached one last time. She touched her forehead to Mara's, the Kavreth gesture of recognition, of bond formation reserved for pack members. Then she led her siblings to their parents, leaving Mara alone in the lift. The lead xenobiologist, a grizzled Kavreth named Rothek, helped Mara to her feet. His translator rendered his words into clear standard. "What did you do?" They never trust other species so quickly, especially when frightened. Mara brushed off her uniform and smiled. "I just sat down." Later, when the station's security footage was reviewed, it would become required viewing for first contact training across 12 sectors. Not because of any grand diplomatic gesture or brilliant strategic thinking, but because it captured something fundamental about humanity that other species struggled to understand. When faced with danger, humans could choose to be dangerous, but more remarkably, more uniquely, they could also choose to be still. And sometimes, in that stillness, they found a way to bridge the impossible distances between species, cultures, and evolutionary paths. Dr. Mara Soren returned to her hydroponics bay, where her tomatoes still refused to fruit properly. But in the Kavreth quarters, 4 cubs curled together for sleep, and in their dreams, they remembered the strange human who sat cross-legged and taught them that sometimes the scariest thing in the universe is also the safest.